reaction, for me at least, for like around me, is that was the first time I thought that I was different. Like I always knew I was a little different because I was Arab and everything, but that it was okay. But that was different in a bad way, because then people would call you out, it's like, okay, well, do you know about the extremists? Do you know about the radicals? Do you know about this? And it's like, I don't know anything.
When I went back and looked at some of the suffering that went onto the Afghan and Iraqi people, along with the Palestinian, like I was really pretty shocked. Like it was like a cognitive like dissonance for a second, because I remembered like cheering on like the USA, let's bomb them and get them back, but I didn't realize that the people that were bombing were not necessarily responsible, and the people that were being targeted weren't criminals, weren't terrorists.
It seems like 9/11 opened the door for discussion about Islam. Lots of Americans didn't know much about Islam, and after these attacks occurred, seemed like there was a collective drive to learn more about Islam. So I feel like it's opened up the opportunity to teach others about my religion.
It has opened the discussion about Islam, but at the same time, most people in that discussion do not want to know. Like they really don't care about what Islam is. They care about what Islam pertains to, like the attacks. We are a religion of peace, but people take it out of context, and I wish that 9/11 wasn't the event that brought Islam to the forefront.
The entire incident changed the focus of my career. September 11th was just a snapshot in history, and I think many people forget, how did the United States put themselves in that situation to begin with? And that's what we really need to think about. I mean, are we a better nation or a worse nation because of it?
It might have caused those to look at okay, why were people so motivated that they would kill 3,000 Americans out of the blue on one day in a coordinated attack? Bush had his explanation that it was they hate our freedoms, but obviously it goes much deeper than that. And I think a lot of people, including myself, had to understand it. I didn't get it. And looking into the history of it before and after, I think we have to mourn the victims of 9/11 today, but we also have to reflect on our own victims all around the world that are far more numerous.
This has led to, indirectly, look at the U.S. economy today, and look at the U.S. economy if it were not for two wars. So when you look at September 11th, you have to look at this chain reaction, and you have to say, how did the U.S. respond to this incident? Statistics clearly show that after September 11th, there have been more converts to Islam in America than any time in U.S. history. Is that an accident?
We have a few friends, mutual friends that aren't here right now, that they graduated or whatnot. But the day after 9/11, they had their homes raided by the FBI.
It's saddening to think that it really it dampened the relationship between many Muslim Americans at the time and law enforcement. I don't want to lay too much blame on law enforcement. We have to keep in mind that that's the only way they knew how to react.
Nearly 4 years ago, there was an attempted bomb threat at my younger brother's in the middle school, and the first thing that they did, they called up 3 Muslims, and he was one of them, and they raided their lockers, and they made them look like terrorist suspects. He was about 12. How do you fix that? That's damaging.
There's obviously the sense of fear that built up after 9/11, but being a part of the Islamic community in Pittsburgh, it does feel like we are under a microscope lens at times.
The United States is perceived, and at times rightly, as waging a war on Islam. We're fighting in Muslim lands, and we're discriminating against Muslim people. That feeds the propaganda of these terrorist organizations. That's exactly their claim. This is not just an assault on the Muslim community, though. This is an assault on all of our rights. If Muslims can be targeted like this, then we can all be targeted like this, and it's just a matter of time.
Even when President Obama got elected, back in 2008, he had to reiterate that statement, that this is still not a war on Islam, and it's war on terror. But just the fact that he had to reiterate that is kind of baffling, because it shows that that statement isn't getting to the head, to the collective conscious of Americans.
America has wonderful opportunities for a lot of people, a lot of different people, and it can do a lot of good. But at the same time, like 9/11 opened my eyes to look back at what America has done, not just to Muslims but to everybody. And I look at it and it disgusts me. There's no way, if we don't learn from what happens within this last decade, it will get worse.
And 9/11 tested the foundation of our Bill of Rights like no other event ever. It reminded me as a law enforcement agent that those constitutional safeguards are truly sacred, and it's what really makes the United States separate from any other entity. Our country is looking at these constitutional safeguards, and we're beginning to cherish them even more.
The spirit, in many ways, can be related to the 60s and the 70s in Vietnam. The reason we don't see the huge protests, I think, is because of the fear that 9/11 still has in our hearts. There was no Vietnamese attack on America. If we're going to change things, if we're going to really reestablish a country based on civil liberties and the freedoms of all people, I think that we need to overcome that fear that lies at the heart of 9/11 and have the courage to stand up for the Muslim American community and for the rights of all peoples.